Amarkantak to Dindori. About 6 months later, we stood in front of the spring at Amarkantak once again. Gangotri, Yamunotri, and Narmada Kund. These are places where rivers emerge from the womb of the earth and come into her lap. Here the water of the river is as pure, bright, and tender as a newborn babe. A new chapter of our journey started from here. So far, we had been walking on the Narmada's north bank towards the source. Henceforth, we would walk along the south bank towards the estuary. We reached Kapildhara in about 2 hours. Most pilgrims take the road from here and go to Dindori. But we were committed to following the Narmada's banks. However, our steps faltered when we were faced with the steep gorge at Kapildhara. No one goes along there. We could not even locate a broken trail that we could follow into the valley. In spite of my earnest entreaties, nobody was willing to accompany us. Their warnings about the snakes and scorpions that infested the riverbank in the heat exacerbated our fears. The gorge looked dangerous enough. The people discouraged us even more. But we were determined not to leave the banks of the Narmada, even if it meant going through the valley. Mother Narmada, protect us. Descent was impossible just below Kapildhara. We managed to climb down a little further on. There were hundreds of beehives near the fall. I was surprised to see them, especially since there hadn't been any at Diwali. The bees probably liked the cool here in summer. We scrambled down the side of Dudhara and went onwards very slowly and carefully over the rocks. The way was so ragged that most of the time we had no idea which direction to go in. Stumbling and rising, we progressed inch by inch, unwilling to tarry in the desolate gorge. The Narmada too had no wish to delay. She sped downwards at high speed, leaping over obstacles. Amarkantak is not a high mountain. The climb had taken 2 hours the first time round. Then we had left the river in favor of the road. This time we were following the Narmada with no path at all. It would take longer. Still, we would get down by dusk. We went along, clinging to the Narmada's banks. On both sides were high, thickly wooded mountains with the slender river flowing between. In the afternoon, the valley began to spread out on both sides. I realized that the mountains were about to end. The plain was ahead. As we went on, we found a footpath. We also saw 1 or 2 villagers. We spent the night at Pakarishondha and left early the next morning. Now the Narmada could clearly be seen ahead, flowing through bare fields. So far the thick forests of the valley had concealed her, but here she was clearly visible from far away. We sat down in the shade of a tree to make lunch. A man from a nearby village came along. He was very happy to meet us and suggested, "Sir, we will be singing kirtans all night long in our village. Please come and stay at my house." The rhythmic chanting of devotional songs was going on in the neighborhood when we arrived at his house. The next day was the wedding of the mango tree, so we stayed there for 2 days. His neighbor had planted a mango tree in his yard. The tree had been yielding fruit for the last 2 years, but until the tree was married, it would not be possible for him to eat its fruit. This is the local custom. The mango tree was married to the jasmine creeper. The priest came to perform the ceremony. The marriage was duly celebrated. We all enjoyed watching it. An event like this enlivens a hard village life. In Garkamata, we stayed at Gopi Kotuar's house. There was a wedding in the village. We were also invited. After the bride and groom had walked around the sacred fire, everyone stooped in respect to the feet of the bridal pair. I also paid my respects, praised the bride's beauty and the groom's strength, and unwittingly caused quite a stir when I put 2 rupees in the bride's hand. Everyone else was giving 10 paise each. One curious feature was that it was not the bride's home, but the bridegroom's. In these parts, the couple circled the sacred fire 4 times at the girl's house and 3 times at the boy's. As we went on from there, we found another of the Narmada's waterfalls. This is the smallest of the river's numerous falls, only 1 meter high. Cutting and curving, the water had created hollows in the stony bed of the river. We made our way over the shriveled earth. When we had walked along the opposite bank at Diwali, everything had been so green. In its place, now there was sun-cracked, dry, brown earth. Not so much as a tree for shade. We made a point to leave very early each morning and stop around mid-morning at whichever village we reached. Next stop, Banjartola. After that, Sivni Sangam, where the Sivni river flows into the Narmada. There were excellent facilities at the temple near the confluence, and we liked the solitude, so we stayed there for 4 days. Those were days of weddings. The groom's wedding processions used to pass in front of the temple through the day. Very young brides and grooms rode on horseback accompanied by the party on foot, singing and playing instruments. Once, when a marriage party was crossing the river, the bride, enchanted by the Narmada's cool water, began to play in it. The little girl quite forgot she was a bride as she played in the soothing water with a few friends of the same age, reluctant to leave. Mother Narmada casts such a strong spell. We saw many wedding processions on Baisakh Purnima. The sound of clarions, cymbals, large and small kettle drums resounded all day. Brides and grooms with fans in their hands rode by on ponies. The dowry was carried in baskets suspended from a bamboo pole over the shoulder. One after another, the wedding parties went by, 10 to 15 members each. Totaram sold glass bangles near Gorakhpur. He used to come to bathe in the Narmada every day. His parrot came with him, not in a cage but proudly perched on his shoulder. It never flew away. Totaram was very fond of his parrot. His was a lonely life, no family, no elders, no children. As soon as he managed to save a little money, he set out on a pilgrimage. One day I asked him, "Totaram, why didn't you marry?" "I was engaged 3 times, but not once did the marriage come through. The engagements were broken for one reason or another." Totaram's tale of misfortune saddened us greatly, but he himself didn't take it to heart. His parrot was everything to him. We visited Gorakhpur market one day before resuming our journey. It was high summer. The landscape was arid and barren. There were no crops in the fields, no hills, no forests, not a single tree for shade. The villages up ahead could be seen from a distance. As there was no fear of wandering off the route, we did not care about the path but walked along the bank. The heat usually made things difficult for us, but luckily there were clouds that morning. The sky was overcast by the time we reached Patharkucha. Here there were many boulders across the riverbed. Thus far, the river had flowed only through mud. There was not even a stone to wash clothes on. We cooked our lunch beside the boulder-strewn riverbed. It started raining heavily soon after we finished our lunch. We sought shelter in the village and ended up staying there for the night because the roads became impassable on account of the heavy rainfall. We set out at dawn the next morning. Near Karvimata, a solitary mound offered a change from the surrounding plain. So we climbed up. On the summit, hundreds of tridents, large and small, in a variety of shapes and forms, were planted in the ground. These are symbols of Lord Shiva. Some of them were real works of art. Just as primary branches sprout from a trunk, then more slender secondaries, so smaller tridents had sprouted from the larger ones and even slimmer tridents from those. The number of varied forms that could be developed from one simple shape was remarkable. This must have been a focal place for tantric rituals at one time. Now it was deserted. Further on in Likhni, when we asked an old woman for drinking water, she said, "Beta, have a chapati first, and then drink water. It will be good for you to eat as well as drink after walking in the heat." She was like a mother coaxing and tending to her child. Her abundant affection could not be refused. We accepted her chapatis sprinkled with sugar. Her face beamed with contentment as she watched us eat. Our journey took us through Majhi Akhar, then Gomti Sangam, and then Lachman Madhava. There was a holy woman living at Lachman Madhava. I explained to her that because of my job, I could not do the whole pilgrimage at one stretch. I could only do it bit by bit during the vacations. Beta, a sweet tastes just as good whether you eat it all at once or bit by bit. Don't worry about it, she reassured me. In the afternoon, we reached the small town of Dindori, where village people wade across the Narmada in an endless stream. Men with big bundles balanced on their heads or tied to the carrying poles over their shoulders, and women with bundles of firewood on their heads and babies strapped in their backs, first paid their respects by kneeling at the edge of the river. Then, sprinkling a few drops of the water on their heads, they would step into the river saying, "Glory to Mother Narmada." Due to the slipperiness underfoot and the strong current, they moved with extreme caution. While crossing the main stream, everyone became even more alert and vigilant. Taking each step with care, holding each other by the arm, they advanced very slowly. What a terrifying crossing! We stayed at Dindori for 3 days before returning home. The journey from Amrakantak to Dindori should have been the toughest part of the pilgrimage, but it was the easiest. Half a day on the mountain, 1 day in the forest, then some days through a narrow plain. The high-spirited Narmada cannot be contained by ordinary rules.